Welcome to Sounding Board. This is a weekly program produced by club members of Seroptimist International of Novato. The mission of the organization is to improve the lives of women and girls through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. The program today is about the North Bay Science Discovery Day. This is an awesome annual one-day event that targets nothing more than to try to get kids excited about science, technology, engineering, and math. My name is Carol Bennett, your moderator, a Seroptimist member, and also part of this awesome team. And I have the privilege of introducing my two guests, Julie Mangada, who is a scientist at the Buck Institute, Research on Aging, located in the beautiful, beautiful hills overlooking Novato. And Don Pierce, a physician, retired physician from Kaiser Permanente. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I am really proud to have worked with the two of you from the very beginning, and that was 5 years ago when we got together. At the very beginning of this whole thing, we put together 4 events now, and there are about 10 real active volunteers on the core committee. And I think we even have a picture of this crew in front of our helicopter. Maybe we can put that up here. But anyway, Julie, you were the brains behind the whole thing. You started it all, so set the stage and tell us how it all began.
Well, it began over 5 years ago, the planning stages. I was asked to sit on a steering committee with the main core organizer of the Bay Area Science Festival, which is, of course, the director, Kishore Harry, and he works through UCSF. So I was on the steering committee, and a whole bunch of us sitting around the table at Cal Academy of Science trying to figure out if we were going to have an entire Bay Area-wide science festival, what would that look like? So as I sat and had these discussions with representatives from UCSF, Cal Academy of Science, the Exploratorium, the Tech Museum, I mean, these are all really amazing people that I really looked up to as a scientist, movers and shakers to bring science to the public. And it occurred to me that if we were going to have a Bay Area Science Festival, that it really would make sense to have something specific and unique north of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
Because as we know, there's a lot of science that goes on right here in our own neighborhood. And as thrilling as it would have been to participate in a science festival at AT&T Park with all of those names I just mentioned, it's even more thrilling to have the opportunity to really showcase the science that we have in our own backyard.
And we have a lot of science up here in the North Bay that people don't realize
We
even.
do, right.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is, of course, you know, talked about a lot, and we're kind of famous for our winemaking, and we have amazing artisanal cheeses and breads up here, and you know, of course, the dairy production, and there's a lot of stuff on the surface that people recognize as science, but there's a whole lot that goes on in all of our community businesses that is certainly a scientific endeavor, and that's what we want the kids to get excited about. So I mulled this over, and I am lucky to work at such an amazing place as the Buck Institute.
Right.
Because when I came back here and I pitched the idea to our executive staff, pitched the idea as in, told them, hey, we're going to do a science festival, and the Buck needs to really spearhead this and bring it north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And they were totally supportive.
Really, right from the beginning?
Right from the beginning.
Excellent.
Yeah, our CEO, Brian Kennedy, and our General Counsel, Mary McEachran, of course, Ralph O'Rear, our Vice President of Operations, they were all 1,000% behind this idea. They thought it was a great idea, and they offered to, you know, perhaps put together a group of volunteers to run this. And I think the reasoning behind that was no better way to showcase the science of a community than to put together a grassroots sort of effort that's led by members from the community. And that was the nucleation point right there. And you folks came on board and
now, weren't you
made it
also
happen.
involved with the North Bay Leadership Council? And
Yes.
folks, and that's when
Yes, that's
people
when
step
things
forward.
really started to happen. So we were incredibly blessed to have a whole cadre of volunteers show up for this position, to be sort of the directors and the people to bring the festival up here. And that's, of course, how you folks got involved.
Right.
But then the North Bay Leadership Council, through the direction of Cynthia Murray, really sort of put the rubber to the road.
Right.
And that's where we sat at a conference table and we had our first sort of focus group where we were pulling together people from the community that were in the business realm and tapping into their resources. So Cynthia Murray pulled together this amazing team, and it included the Benedettis from Clover Stornetta. It included Jeff Weber from Agilent, which is now Keysight Technologies, and people from Bodega Marine Labs. I mean, Cynthia Murray really put a lot of thought into representatives from all kinds of different vertical science markets. And we sat and had our first think tank, and the festival that we've had these last several years is really the result of those ideas of some really amazing business people in the area, and pulled off, of course, by the hard work of our volunteer staff.
Right. Well, this has been, I don't know if we mentioned this so far, but it's been free, absolutely free to the public. And we've just had a great building of people. The first time we had 4,000 visitors, then we had 8,000 visitors, then we had 10,000 in 2014 now. What year is this? This is 2014, isn't it? We had over 12,000 visitors, and it's all free. But how is this done? How is this possibly done to be free to people? Don, fill us in.
Well, of course, as Julie mentioned, the logistical support came from the Buck Institute and as well as UCSF. But of course, things don't run without money.
That's right.
And we charge our for-profit businesses, and they're glad to pay for booths, but that's just a small part of how we get the running material. We have just a plethora of businesses who have contributed, not only volunteers and had exhibits, but they've contributed money, and so
some have given us a lot of money.
We've had a good money and good support from a lot of local businesses. They realize that, you know, this is part of the future of the community, is to have people aware that science and technology, engineering, math is everywhere, and including in their businesses.
Now, didn't you do a mathematical calculation as to how much it costs for each student? Or each visitor, I should say, each visitor.
For each attendee, we are a bargain. We're a little over $2 an attendee, and I think that that's a fifth of what some of the other comparable exhibits might calculate. Yeah.
And when you think about how much, I'm not cutting anything else that's out there, but if you're talking about the average attendance at a Discovery Museum someplace, what are they, about $10 a person or $10 a visitor, maybe even more? And if you've got a large family, that's prohibitive. That's all there is to it. And so this is an absolutely all-day free event, which is just open to everybody. It's just fabulous. So why is it necessary? Why are we doing this? Why is it necessary to get kids excited about what we call STEM and making sure that's clear to everybody? That means science, technology, engineering, and math. And Julie, you work with kids all the time. Tell us why it's important.
Well, STEM, I mean, being fluent in science is really like learning a foreign language. And once you learn that language, how you apply it is completely up to you. And giving students that resource, just opening their mind to science, scientific practice and principle, and the language of science opens up doors that they never knew perhaps existed. And why we would like to get younger kids involved in that is, you know, it's funny, but in my experience, as you go out into the community and really work with kids of all ages, the real exciting, I mean, they're all exciting to work with, but I think the most rewarding is when you're with those second graders and first graders because they haven't heard that science is hard.
Oh,
So when you
got
go
it.
in and you tell them, well, I'm a scientist, of course you are. And then you say, and today we're going to do science, of course we are. And they haven't gotten that notion that science is hard yet, or it's something that you struggle with. So they are just so excited and enthusiastic about everything. And our festival can really foster that and feed into that. And hopefully, if you spark the innovation at that young age, as they get older and they start to hear that silly rumor that science is hard, they're already hooked.
Yeah,
and
that's
something
good.
our festival does really successfully is students that are older, maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, that are maybe struggling academically and maybe really, especially the girls at that age, that's a really tough age where science suddenly seems to not be cool. And our festival, I think, is really successful in capturing those students that are struggling academically or, maybe turned off to science because of their own social pressures at that age group. And for us to be able to present it by real people, I mean, they're interacting with real scientists. We all wear buttons that say, "Talk to me, I'm a scientist."
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
to the students, this is something then that's attainable. We're real people, and they see how cool science is. And then, of course, for the older students, our festival is great at providing resources for the next step, getting them excited, validating their choice to go into scientific endeavor, and then giving them tools and resources.
Now, our coordinator on the committee, Lyman Black, who coordinates all the exhibitors, has worked hard to bring in almost 90, was it 90 exhibitors we had this last time? And there are only 2 rules for exhibitors. And one is they have to have something jaw-dropping, hands-on for kids to do. And then the second one is they cannot sell anything because we want no child to feel deprived. And I think those are 2 excellent rules. But when you're walking around, I know, Dawn, your wife, Jenny, brings up all the grandchildren that you have. What do you see happening? What you've walked around a lot and observed, what kinds of hands-on things, these jaw-dropping experiences are you seeing kids do?
Well, there's just a tremendous variety, and as you said, science, technology, engineering, and math. To go to life sciences, Kaiser, for instance, has a Save Mr. Simulated's Life, and because Junior Sim, also in the car wreck that they show, exciting, has a broken arm, everybody gets to put a splint on their arm. So at the end of the day, there must be 100 kids walking around with splints on their arms and showing them off. And that's the important thing, is the enthusiasm, excitingness of it. Also in the life sciences, we have from Stanford University, from the Hopkins Marine Lab, we have giant squid. Well, they're not quite giant.
They're 4 feet long squids. Those are pretty big. They're not the kind of calamari that I eat.
If you count the tentacles, they may be 6 feet long.
Whoa.
But the point is, they're the size of a fire hose, and they have just the most crazy beaks on them, and eyes the size of bigger than human eyes.
Really?
And the kids get to put the gloves on, poke their fingers in, see all the parts, maybe draw a picture afterwards. You can tell how popular some of our exhibits are by the smiles on the kids' faces. And that's one of the ways I make the judgment.
And Pacific Air Museum last year brought a helicopter for the kids to crawl around in, and this year they had an F4
F4
cockpit that the kids could get inside and pretend like they're jet pilots. What about the race car? Did you see the race car going?
We have race cars on a track, got to excite kids with that, and busy all day long. We have robots that throw balls and frisbees. Anything that keeps them active, lets them do something is the important thing. You'd think bubbles wouldn't be much. Soap. But the bubble man was crowded all day long. We could have used 3 more buckets of soap.
And those weren't simple bubbles. I saw pictures of those bubbles, and there was one that was about 10 feet long.
Yeah, we had one the size of a Volkswagen. So, as you said, exciting, hands-on, jaw-dropping. It helps if it goes boom.
Yeah, and it's stinky too. It helps if it's
stinky. That too. So with teaching anything, and especially teaching sciences, you have to get people excited about it, and that's what this is. Everything there is meant to be exciting, And you can tell it by the way people didn't want to leave at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
They were, at 4:15, they were still lining up to make soap bubbles.
And I remember even that I couldn't believe the kids would get excited about washing their hands and standing in line to have their hands checked by the nurses to see if they were clean or not by the special machine that they had. I mean, something simple like that. I couldn't believe how popular that was.
Nothing like obliterating germs.
So, Julie, what did you find when you walked around?
Oh, you know, my by far favorite thing is, as a scientist, I understand that scientific practice, pursuit, and principle sort of permeates the fabric of our life. It's everywhere. And to walk around and see the booth from La Tortilla Factory. And that's just a small example of a place where a lot of science goes on in the workplace. But when you're in the grocery store and you're buying the La Tortilla tortillas, you're not necessarily making the connection of the science that goes into that. Food science is really big.
I remember when I first met Willie Tamaya. He was the founder of La Tortilla Factory, and he was so excited that somebody would finally realize there is science behind making a tortilla. And they have a full-time scientist on their staff, and he was so excited to be invited to have a booth.
Yeah, and that's just a perfect example of what this festival showcases. Again, I can't stress enough, these are all local businesses. This is a grassroots effort. And you know, as Dawn had mentioned, Kaiser, our own community Kaiser, and, you know, La Tortilla Factory, and, you know, even with the Buck Institute, that's something that...
Oh, tell us about the Buck booths. Those were cool. So you had some really good booths.
Yeah,
tell us about those.
We always do the liquid nitrogen ice cream booth because it's as Dawn said, one of the requirements is it has to be jaw-dropping and catchy and fun, and there's nothing more fun than liquid nitrogen ice cream. And
what does that mean to people? I mean, listening here in the audience, what's that? They think, I'm going to eat liquid nitrogen? What does that mean?
Well, the nitrogen, you don't actually eat that. As soon as it comes out of the dewar, it instantly freezes the ice cream ingredients in an endothermic reaction as it boils. And that pulls all the heat out of the system. It sublimates back into the nitrogen in the air that we breathe, which is almost 80%, and you're left with delicious, wonderful ice cream. So that's always a big hit. And, you know, we do collaborate with the Gilly Lab to do the squid dissection. We also do a science as art booth, and we have a microscope booth where we showcase all of our model systems.
That's cool.
Now, those things are, you know, everybody knows that science is inherent in our job. You know, it's in our name, Buck Institute for Research.
Right.
But, you know, and that's great to be able to show people what that really means with our booths. But like you had mentioned, you know, the best part of it for me is walking around and seeing the students make the connections. That science really does weave itself through the fabric of everyday life. And for them to see community businesses and to have that label of science put on what that business practices and what they do, for me, this is not only getting the kids excited about science, it's much more than that. It's economic workforce development.
It is.
We want these kids to be educated and to stay right here in Sonoma and Marin County.
And it makes a statement. It makes a statement to the community that we are more than wine and cheese up here.
Right.
Oh, good. Well, I did want to mention one challenge that's brought to me on occasion, and that is people say, how come I didn't know about this? How come we didn't hear? And, you know, Dawn has talked about the fact that we do get some sponsors with some money, but we don't get an awful lot. And you can't go directly to the students. You can't go directly to the schools. You have to go through the superintendents to get their permission. And we print up maybe 30,000, 40,000 flyers that go out to the Friday packs. That's not enough for everybody in 4 counties. We're talking about 4 counties, Napa, Sonoma, Marin, and Solano. And some of the school districts have opted for just not paper anymore. They want to do it all on email. And that kind of bothers me a little bit because then we don't know, we don't know if it's gotten down to the kids or not. So if you're out there and you're listening and you know, and put the pressure on the principals, put the pressure on the superintendents, you know, to ask for the information, to share it, because we share the information with every one of the superintendents, whether they pass it down or not, that's their business. We put a little bit of money this last year. We put a little bit of money into media with KZST and KBBF. We'd like to put a lot more money into media for more people to know about it, but that again comes back to more money. And Don, what other ways are we advertising and marketing? You were going to mention a couple of them.
Well, in addition to notifying the schools in Friday folders, which is a large amount of how we think people get the information,
Right.
we have the radio stations are on site as well. They bought into this very well. They both plan to come back next year as they were
good.
there last year, and so we're getting strong support on the radio, but that costs us some money. So again,
Right.
we look to our sponsors and their sponsorship of us as well. Then we have Facebook, and we have a website, and on both those you can contact me, a la sponsorship, and you can contact us with ideas and suggestions, and if you want to be a volunteer as well. I might say we didn't talk about volunteers.
Oh, we didn't, did we?
And it's important because our student volunteers, in my opinion, serve as very good role models and also as word of mouth for the younger kids. We know from our statistics that about 90% of people plan to come back the next year. And if half of those do, we've got a good amount.
And that's
in
true
addition,
because Mike Roa had a special team of about 30, maybe 40 high school students who were coming over to do their community service hours, and he had them very well organized. And they really did an awesome job this year, so we'll probably be taking on more of those student volunteers in the future. It was really nice.
so contact us through our website or our Facebook. Our website is northbayscience.org, and our Facebook, you can just put North Bay Science Discovery Day on Facebook search and you'll find us.
So anyway, Julie, I'm going to pick up on something you said earlier that I might have cut you off, and I apologize if I did, but this whole event, this whole North Bay Science Discovery Day, is certainly good for kids, and it's certainly good for their families because it helps families understand science and technology, engineering, math, and get behind them. But what else does it do for our community, such as networking? And you were going to talk about a collaboration and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's such a hidden gem in pulling together a festival like this. It's not just about the day of the event, which is spectacular, but it's also about the community connections that we're able to make through the sponsors and the exhibitors. For example, educating a student, takes a village. And we need to provide resources for our teachers to be able to adequately educate our students in science, technology, engineering, and math. So what we have really, you had mentioned Lyman had over 90 exhibitors, and that's a pool of volunteers and community educators that we now have as we move forward. So these folks not only feel connected with their community on the day of the exhibit when they're getting to showcase the science that they do at work and get kids excited about it, but then we can call them up and say, I have a 7th grade teacher who's getting ready to go into electrical circuitry, and you engineers at Enphase did an amazing job at our science festival. Can we put our heads together and come up with some real hands-on resources for these teachers? And that's kind of where we're going with this now. We've had so much success with the Science Festival that we're now able to really build a family of community educators and science practitioners.
That's great.
And work together. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
And also Teresa at
the Children's Museum of Sonoma County, absolutely. They have been an amazing resource. Of course, CMOSC, the Children's Museum, is just growing by leaps and bounds. And I think that's really a great testament to the fact that it's so needed for that age group to get kids excited about hands-on stuff. And Teresa and all of the folks at CMOSC are just invaluable in helping our exhibitors design hands-on activities. It's one thing, if you're an engineer and you've worked on the New Bay Bridge, or if you're working with PG&E on, certain power issues, that's great, and everybody knows about the science and that if they're in that field. But how to translate that into a cool hands-on exhibit,
that's hard.
like Dawn had mentioned, that is hard.
It is
and
hard.
We're so lucky to have people like Teresa
and you
that can actually make that connection and make it really
And we've given
cool.
workshops and helped and met individually
Yeah.
with teams of people at their site to help them translate their heady kind of concepts
right.
into something that's hands-on and
Right.
jaw-dropping experience.
That's a great point, Carol, because we do give workshops, whether here at the Buck Institute in our Learning Center or up in Santa Rosa at the Sea Mosque itself. So that shouldn't have any exhibitor shy away from participating because they feel intimidated by translating their science, because we've got that covered. We can do that with them.
That's great. Well, for sure, we want everyone to put it on their calendar for Saturday, October 24th, 2015. We already have the date on the calendar. And our website is northbayscience.org. And all the details are there. So if anybody wanted to be involved, Don, especially from a sponsor's point of view, or what would be the details there?
Go on the website, look for Don Pierce. You'll find my name and phone number there, and give me a call. I'll fix you up. I should say that we've reserved already the fairgrounds, the Mexican Village, the Garrett and Craft buildings, the Hall of Flowers. Tremendous amount, we can handle 20,000 people, and that's what we'd like to see.
Yeah.
We have 90% of people saying they're going to come back, 90% of sponsors going to come back, and we're going to have a wonderful day.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And Julie, what about exhibitors? And any details there?
Oh, just come one, come all. If you work in Sonoma, Marin, Napa, or Solano County, there's science in what you do, and this is the perfect opportunity to showcase that. And I would like to say, Dawn had mentioned our website and Facebook page, and I would love everybody to like us on Facebook.
Good.
Because we are active on that all year long, and
Yeah.
there's all kinds of great stories and resources, and so like us on Facebook.
Good. And if there are any general questions at all, please, feel free to write me an email, and my email is on our website, but just in case you don't, it's Carol with an E, at bayareascience.org. So, and Julie says, please like us on Facebook, and Dawn says, please check our website. And at this time, I just really want to thank you both for being here today. We're so happy
Thank
to have the
you.
Buck Institute provide us with this beautiful television studio. We're always so happy to be here. And that's, again, Julie Mangada, who's a scientist here at the Buck Institute, and Don Pierce, a retired medical doctor from Kaiser. Barbara Madrid, thank you very much, a Seroptimus member, for producing and directing this show, and Patricia Hess for being the floor manager, Leon Johnson, our technician, our technical engineer behind the scenes, and most of all, our viewing audience. Thank you for being here.